This is the Thom Hartmann Program. We're talking with Professor Steve Keen, Professor of Economics and Finance at the University of Western Sydney in Australia, the author of Debunking Economics. His website, debtdeflation.com. Be sure to click over to his blog and get to his Kickstart Minsky Now project. It's a really good one. His Twitter is Prof. Steve Keen. It's spelled Keen. And Professor Keen, you pointed out that while our national debt is pushing $14 trillion, and arguably you could pull almost three out of that as, Social Security money we owe ourselves and other things like that. But nonetheless, there it is, $14 trillion, that the debt level of private debt in the United States, I'm assuming that is household debt plus corporate debt, is $38 billion, did you say?
No, 38 trillion.
38 trillion. Thank you. Yes.
It's two and more than 2.5 times the level of government debt.
Right. And so historically, what has that been relative to government debt? I mean, historically, like as in over the last, since World War II anyway. And what constrains that, or what should be done about that if it's a problem?
It's a problem. I mean, a certain amount of debt is necessary for an economy to function because people borrow money to invest in new factories. They borrow money to buy cars and houses they can't afford to buy out of their weekly paychecks. So there's two legitimate reasons to borrow money. And I think if you look at the American economy, the amount of entrepreneurship that goes on there, you need a substantial amount of debt, more so than the Australian economy, to finance entrepreneurial investment. So I'd say that means a debt level of about 50 to 75% of GDP is probably a sustainable and sensible level in the American economy. And
in the private sector.
That level, private sector debt.
Right.
That American debt, private sector debt after the Second World War began at 45% of GDP. Mm-hmm. And it's risen, a couple of ups and downs, but it's risen to 303% of GDP at its peak and is now down to about 250% of GDP.
Was there, if I may, was there an exponential increase of this post-Reagan as opposed to a slower increase pre-Reagan? Because I know he changed so many policies that had to do with banking and debt or is this has been just a continuous trend ever since World War II?
It's a continuous trend. To me, it's a bit like having a pot which is getting, you're getting hotter and hotter, and you simply turn up the pressure at which beyond which the pot won't explode all the time, where you remove constraints to enable it to continue growing, and then finally explodes and bursts. So the trend is fairly constant all the way through, from 1945 through to 2009, and then it falls off a cliff. And that's the real cliff you face. It's a debt cliff, not a fiscal cliff.
Falls off the cliff. You mean it actually, the debt level increases, right?
Falls, no, collapses.
Oh, it collapses.
When you borrow, a major part of my analysis, and this is actually where a lot of economists believe I'm doing double counting, and they are wrong, I am right. It's a simple idea when you hear it to a public, but an economist will often end up doing a piece of logic that leads them astray. But if you imagine the amount of spending you can do, it's the sum of what you earn and what you in your new borrowing.
Sure.
So your total spending is your income plus your change in debt.
Right.
Now because the banks can create money by creating debt, and it's a double entry bookkeeping process for them to do it. That aggregates through to the national level. Your increase in debt doesn't mean somebody else has less money to spend. It's more money being created. So total spending in the economy is the sum of income plus the change in debt. Now, when that's going on and the change in debt is rising, then of course there's more economic activity both in goods and services markets and also stock markets and housing markets.
Right.
Everybody feels good, but it relies upon that debt continuing to rise compared to income. Now, at some certain point, as we saw in 2009, it becomes impossible to service the debt because you've got to pay the debt out of income. That's the catch.
Right.
You get a certain point where people can't do that anymore. More people lose money. The debt stops rising, and then you plunge off the real cliff, the debt cliff. And that began back in 2008 when people stopped increasing debt.
Right, and therefore the economy slows down because debt is decreasing, income is remaining the same, and therefore economic activity is decreasing. If you were to model this, tell me if this metaphor makes any sense. You're familiar with the game of musical chairs?
Oh yeah,
you got a bunch of chairs. Everybody's as long as the music is everybody's walking. The music stops, and you pull one chair out, and somebody's stuck without a seat. Essentially, the debt service seems to me, the interest on that debt which is going to the banksters, it seems to me like that's the missing chair in musical chairs. In other words, as we are constantly adding more debt, we're also adding more interest that has to be paid, and there's no way to put that interest back into the economy, or am I missing something?
You're missing something, but you've got one point which is right, another point that's caught up in one of the problems in the way people think about this. People think if you borrow $100 from a bank and it charges you 5% interest, you borrowed 100, you've got to pay back 105. How can you possibly do it? That's a logical error, because when you borrow that $100, that's a stock of money. It then can turn over several times in a year. You might make, say, $300 worth of transactions out of that money, buying and selling goods and services. You might pay wages for, say, $250, make 50 something profit, and pay $5 to the bank. It's quite easy to do.
Right.
But that's when you're doing it with income and making goods and producing goods and services and having real turnover in the economy. If instead you are speculating on the rising price of a house, then you're not actually selling the house. You're accumulating the debt until you sell the house.
Right.
And then you can pay the system back so long as the house price has risen. But it's actually rising levels of debt that's causing the house price to rise.
So in a manufacturing economy, it's safe, but in a fire economy, a finance, insurance, real estate economy, where it's driven by debt, then it is more like a game of musical chairs.
Exactly. And we've been playing the game of musical chairs in the fire economy. Really, it took over the economy pretty much back from 1966, and it's just been getting worse and going up and down in various ways. Certainly from 93 on, it's been all musical chairs, with first of all the dot-com bubble and then the housing bubble.
So what do we do? We have less than a minute left. I'm sorry.
I think the only way out of this is to abolish the debt. And you can't do it in a way that damages savers, innocent bystanders, in effect. Okay, so I took what I call a modern debt jubilee, to use that fiat money capacity of the government to pay off a large amount of the private debt, but to benefit savers at the same time.
So basically, say we're going to pay off all mortgages and student loans,
and give people money who weren't in debt as well.
And instead of creating that money out of the banks and the private sector, you create that money out of the government and the public sector.
That's right, and then get rid of the mistake we made.